First Burma War 1824 to 26. The first war with Burma was fought when the Burmese expansion westwards, an occupation of Arkan and Manipur, and the threat to Assam and the Brahmaputra Valley led to continuous friction along the ill-defined border between Bengal and Burma. In the opening decades of 19th century, the British expeditionary forces occupied Rangoon in May 1824 and reached within 72 kilometers of the capital at Ava. Peace was established in 1826 with the Treaty of Yandabo, which provided that the government of Burma pay rupees 1 crore as forex compensation, ceded coastal provinces of Arkan and Tenasserim, abundant claims on Assam, Kachar, and Jhansia, recognized Manipur as an independent state, negotiate a commercial treaty with Britain, and accept a British resident at Ava while posting a Burmese and at Calcutta. Second Burma War 1852. The Second War was the result of British commercial need and in the imperialist policy of Lord Dalhousie. The British merchants were keen to get hold of timber resources of Upper Burma and also sought further inroads into the Burmese market. This time, the British occupied Pegu, the only remaining coastal province of Burma. An intense guerrilla resistance had to be overcome before complete British control of Lower Burma could be established. Third Burma War 1885. After the death of Burmese king Bindan, his son Thibaw succeeded to the throne. Thibaw from the beginning itself was hostile towards the British. The British merchants at Rangoon at Lower Burma had been complaining about the stepmotherly treatment by Thibaw, who had also been negotiating commercial treaties with the rival powers of France, Germany, and Italy. The French also planned to lay a rail link from Mandalay to the French territory at a time when the British were in conflict with the French in Niger, Egypt, and Madagascar. A humiliating fine had been imposed on a British timber company by Thibaw. Deferring order, the invasion and final annexation of Upper Burma in 1885, the British had to face a strong guerrilla uprising in the whole of Burma soon after, and a nationalist movement after the First World War. The Burmese nationalists joined hands with the Indian National Congress. To weaken this link, Burma was separated from India in 1935. The Burmese nationalist movement further intensified under U Aung San during the Second World War, which finally led to the independence of Burma on January 4, 1948. Anglo Tibetan relations. Tibet was ruled by a theocracy of Buddhist monks, lamas, under nominal suzerainty of China. The British efforts to establish friendly and commercial relations with the Tibet had not yielded any result in the past, and a deadlock had been reached by the time of Curzon's arrival in India. The Chinese suzerainty over Tibet was ineffective and Russian influence at Lhasa was increasing. There were reports of Russian arms and ammunition coming into Tibet. Curzon felt alarmed and sent a small Gorkha contingent under Colonel Young Husband and on a special mission to Tibet to oblige the Tibetans to come to an agreement. The Tibetans refused to negotiate and offered non-violent resistance. Young Husband pushed this way into Lhasa. August 1904, while the Dalai Lama fled. Treaty of Lhasa 1904. Young husband dictated term to be Tibetan officials which provided that Tibet would pay an indemnity of rupees 75 lakh at the rate of 1 lakh rupees per annum. As a security for payment, the Indian government would occupy the Chumbi Valley territory between Bhutan and Sikkim for 75 years. Tibet would respect the frontier of Sikkim. Trade marts would be open at Yatung, Grins, Gatok, and Tibet would not grant any concession for railways, roads, telegraph, etc. to any foreign state but give Great Britain some control over foreign affairs of Tibet. Later, on the insistence of the Secretary of State and true to the pledge given to Russia, the treaty was revised, reducing the indemnity from rupees 75 lakh to rupees 25 lakh and providing for evacuation of Chumbi Valley after 3 years. The valley was actually evacuated only in January 1908. Significance: only China gained in the end out of the whole affair because the Anglo-Russian Convention of 1907 provided that the two great powers would not negotiate with the Tibet except through the mediation of the Chinese government. However, Curzon's policy counteracted all Russian schemes in Tibet. Anglo-Afghan relation. In the early 19th century, increased Russian influence in Persia replaced British influence and thwarted an English scheme for establishment of a new route by river Euphrates to India, especially after the Treaty of Turkomankai 1828. The English court alarmed about possible Russian plans regarding India. Soon there was a search for a scientific frontier from the Indian state. Passes of the northwest seemed to hold the key of enter India. The need was felt for Afghanistan to be under control of a ruler friendly to the British. Forward policy of Auckland. Auckland, who came to India as the Governor General in 1836, advocated a forward policy. This implied that the company government in India itself had to take initiatives to protect the boundary of British India from a probable Russian attack. This objective was to be achieved either through treaties with the neighboring countries or by annexing them completely. The Amir of Afghanistan, Dost Muhammad, wanted British friendship but made it conditional on the British helping him to recover Peshawar from the Sikhs, a condition which the British government in India rejected. Dost Muhammad now turned to Russia and Persia for help. That prompted the British government to go ahead with the forward policy, and a tripartite treaty 1838 was entered into by British, Sikhs and Shah Shuja, who had been deposed from the Afghan throne in 1809 and had been living since then a British prisoner at Ludhiana. The treaty provided that Shah Shuja be enthroned with the armed help of the Sikhs, the company remaining in the background, ziggling the money back. Shah Shuja conduct foreign affairs with the advice of the Sikhs and the British. Shah Shuja give up his sovereign rights over emirs of Sindh in return for a large sum of money. Shah Shuja recognized the Sikh ruler Maharaja Ranjit Singh's claim over the Afghan territories on the right bank of the river of Indus. First Anglo-Afghan War 1838 to 1842. Soon after the tripartite treaty of 1838, There came about the drastic change in the political situation of the region because the removal of the original irritants. Persia lifted its siege of Herat and Russia recalled its envoy from Kabul. Nevertheless, the British decided to go ahead with their forward policy. This resulted in the First Afghan War 1839 to 48. The British intention was to establish a permanent barrier against schemes of aggression from the northwest. An English army entered triumphantly into Kabul August 1839 after a successful attack. Most of the tribes had already been won over by bribes. Those Muhammad surrendered 1840 and Shah Shuja was made the Amir of Afghanistan. But Shah Shuja was unacceptable to the Afghans. As soon as the British withdrew, the Afghan rose in rebellion, killing the garrison commander in Kabul. The British were compelled to sign a treaty, 1841, with the Afghan chiefs by which they agreed to evacuate Afghanistan and restore Dost Muhammad. But the English plan failed. Under a new expedition, the British reoccupied Kabul in September 1842, but having learned their lesson well, they arrived at a settlement with Dost Muhammad, by which the British evacuated from Kabul and recognized him as the independent ruler of Afghanistan. First Afghan War cost India 1.5 crore rupees and nearly 20,000 men. John Lawrence and the policy of masterly inactivity. John Lawrence, 1864 to 69, started a policy of masterly inactivity, which was a reaction to the disasters of the First Afghan War and an outcome of practical common sense and an intimate knowledge of the frontier problem and of Afghan passion for independence. Even when Dost Muhammad died in 1863, there was no interference in the War of Succession. Lawrence's policy rested on the fulfillment of two conditions. First, that the peace at the frontier was not disturbed, and the second, that no candidate in civil war sought foreign help. And as Sher Ali established himself on the throne, Lawrence tried to cultivate friendship with him. Lytton and the policy of proud reserve. Lytton, a nominee of the conservative government under Benjamin Disraeli 1874 to 80, became the Viceroy of India in 1876. He started a new foreign policy of proud reserve, which was aimed to having scientific frontiers and safeguarding spheres of influence. According to Lytton, the relations with Afghanistan could no longer be ambiguous. Second Anglo-Afghan War, 1870 to 80, Lytton made an offer of a favorable treaty to Sher Ali, but the Amir wanted friendship with both his power neighbors, Russia and British India, while keeping both of them at an arm's length. Later, Sher Ali refused to keep a British envoy in Kabul while having earlier granted a similar concession to the Russians. Lytton was displeased, and when the Russians withdrew their envoy from Kabul, Lytton decided to invade Afghanistan. Sher Ali fled in face of the British invasions, and the Treaty of Kanpur, May 1879, was signed by the Yaqub Khan, the eldest son of Sher Ali. Treaty of Kanpur, May 1879. The treaty signed after the Second Anglo-Afghan War provided that the Amir conduct his foreign policy with the advice of Government of India, a permanent British resident be stationed at Kabul, and the government of India gave Amir all support against foreign aggression and an annual subsidy. But soon Yaqub had to abdicate under popular pressure and the British had to recapture Kabul and Kandahar. Abdur Rahman became the new Amir, lightened chalked out a plan for the dismemberment of Afghanistan, but could not carry it out. Ripon abandoned this plan and decided on a policy of keeping Afghanistan as a buffer state. After the First World War and the Russia Revolution 1970, the Afghans demanded full independence. Habibullah, who succeeded Abdur Rahman in 1901, was killed in 1990 and the new ruler Amamullah declared open war on the British. Peace came in 1921 when Afghanistan recovered independence in foreign affairs. British India and the Northwest Frontier. Successive India rulers tried to reach out to this region lying between the Indus and Afghanistan. In their research for a scientific frontier, the conquest of Sindh 1843 and the annexation of Punjab 1849 carried British boundaries beyond the Indus and brought them in contact with the Baloch and Pathan tribes, who were mostly independent, but the Amir of Afghanistan claimed nominally suzerainty over them. During 1891 to 92, the British occupation of Hunza, Nagar and Gilgit Valley, which were passes commanding combinations with Chitral, alarmed Abul Khan, Amir of Afghanistan. A compromise was finally reached by drawing a boundary line known as Durand Line between Afghan and British territories. Amir received some districts and his subsidy was increased, but the Durand Agreement 1893 failed to keep peace and soon there were tribal uprisings. To check these, a permanent British garrison was established at Chitral and troops posted to guard Malakand passes, but tribal uprising continued till 1898. Curzon, the viceroy between 1899 and 1905, followed a policy of withdrawal and concentration. British troops withdrew from advanced posts, which were replaced by tribal levies trained and commanded by British officers. He also encouraged the tribals to maintain peace. He created the Northwest Frontier Provinces and WFP directly under Northwest Front directly under the government of India. Earlier it was under control of the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab. Overall, Curzon's policies resulted in a peaceful Northwest frontier. The peaceful conditions continued thereafter, the occasionally tribal uprising. In January 1932, it was announced that the NWFP was to be constituted as a governor's provinces. Since 1947, the province belongs to Pakistan. Summary: factors which gave success to British in India: superior arms, military discipline, civil discipline, brilliant leadership, financial strength, nationalist pride. Conflict between English and Nawabs of Bengal. Battle of Plassey, June 23, 1757. Robert Clive's victory over Siraz ud-Dowlah laid the territorial foundation of British rule in India. Battle of Buxar, 1764. Clive's victory over the combined armies of Nawab of Bengal, Nawab of Awadh, and the Mughal Emperor at Buxar laid the real foundation of the English power. Treaty of Allahabad, 1765, granted the Diwani rights of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa to the English. Treaty with Nawab of Awadh, treaty with Shah Alam II, Mughal Emperor, Dual government 1765 to 72. British conquest of Mysore. First Anglo-Mysore War 1767 to 69. Treaty of Madras. Second Anglo-Mysore War 1779 to 1784. Treaty of Mangalore. Third Anglo-Mysore War 1790 to 92. Treaty of Serigapattam. Fourth Anglo-Mysore War 1799. Mysore conquered by British force. Anglo-Maratha struggle for supremacy. First Anglo-Maratha War 1775 to 82. Treaty of Surat 1775. Treaty of Purandar 1776 and Treaty of Salabai 1782. Second Anglo-Maratha War 1803 to 5. Treaty of Bessin 1802. The Third Anglo-Maratha War 1870 to 1890. Causes for the defeat of Marathas. Impet leadership, defective nature of state, lost political setup, inferior military system, unsustainable economic policy, superior English diplomacy and espionage, progressive English outlook. Conquest of Sindh 1843. Lost Ellenberg was the Governor General of India. Conquest of Punjab. Treaty of Amritsar 1809. Ranjit Singh and the British. First Anglo-Sikh War 1845 to 46. Second Anglo-Sikh War 1848 to 49. British paramountcy in action. Ring fence policy of Warren Hastings. Subsidiary alliance of Wellesley. Subsidized state Hyderabad 1798 1800. Mysore 1799. Tanzore October 1799. Awadh November 1801. Peshwa December 1801. Bonsal of Bearer December 1803. Sindhia February 1804. Jodhpur 1818. Jaipur 1818. Maishri 1818. Bundi 1818. Bharatpur 1818. Doctrine of Lapse. Lapsed states under Lord Dalhousie 1848 to 56. Satara 1848. Sambalpur 1849. Bhagat 1850. Udaipur 1850. Nagpur 1854. Jhansi 1855. Awadh 1856 on charge of maladministration. Relation of British India with neighboring countries. Anglo-Nepal relations. Anglo-Burma relations. First Anglo-Burma War 1824 to 26. Second Anglo-Burma War 1852. Third Anglo-Burma War 1885. Anglo-Tibetan relations. Treaty of Lhasa 1904. Anglo-Afghan relation. Forward policy of Auckland. First Anglo-Afghan War 1839 to 1842. John Lawrence policy of masterly inactivity. Lytton and the policy of proud reserve. Second Anglo-Afghan War 1870 to 80. Treaty of Gandamak May 1879. Northwest frontier. Durand Agreement 1893.